Frontier by Maggot Moshpit, Chapter 28. Grace quickly disposed of the scrap of paper, not wanting any wandering eyes to see her peering at it. She lay down in her bed and stretched, flicking her tail lazily. She smiled. It looked like she was going to be rescued after all.
What are you smiling about?
She jumped and opened her eyes as her cellmate walked in.
None of your business, Sarah. And where's my tuna?
She asked, changing the subject. Sarah didn't emote much, and she had an uncanny ability to read social cues, even in an Atrian.
Nah, you're hiding something. I can tell by the way your tail goes limp.
She sat up and made a rude gesture at Sarah.
Oh, go get laid.
Sarah climbed to the top bunk, more to hide her expression than to get comfy. Grace had learned how to play the human game of social interaction, which was much more conflict-driven than Atrian socialization. It also kept Sarah from questioning her further.
I ain't no fag, you hear?
Grace laughed.
Right, I saw you eyeing that. What do you call her? Blondie? Yeah.
Sarah grumbled and didn't say another word. Although Grace had formed some semblance of a friendship with a couple of her fellow prisoners, she knew they were criminals, and Grace wasn't. Grace was escaping alone, no matter what. Rackham pushed on the door one more time before slumping against it.
Damn.
Dee slapped his paw.
10 credits.
Oh, heck, D.
He dropped a tiny bill into her paw.
And I told you it wouldn't work.
Taliko, Yar, and a small group of other colonists stood around the closed bulkhead, waiting for it to be opened. Yar kicked it.
I bet Lef's playing a prank on us.
Suddenly there was a bump and a loud scraping of metal. Taliko was so startled she jumped onto Yar's back and clung onto him in a forced piggyback.
What was that?
Rackham put his ear to the door, but there was no further sound.
Whatever it is, it's not making itself seen.
Serlia, Zack, and Feldo were ushered into the cockpit by 3 men. One of them was Henry.
Sir, I bought them.
Serlia made eye contact with Lef.
What the hell is going on here?
Serlia, we have to do as these people say.
She glared at Gray.
Who's Beanpole over there?
He swept across the room silently and eyed the other 3 crew members. He took out his gun and held it, pointing it downwards. He looked at Zack, then at Serlia, then to Feldo, then back to Serlia.
Hello. I recommend you do as your captain says.
He pointed to Henry.
Stay out of the way. If any one of them tries to move, stun them.
Henry nodded.
Of course, Angel Eyes.
Please, we're friends. Call me Gray.
Gray fixed them with his stare again as he explained the situation, telling them about the jailbreak. Serlia jabbed a claw at him defiantly.
Why's this person in prison if they didn't do anything wrong?
Gray raised an eyebrow.
I never said that.
I deduced it. Why would this be for a good cause if your friend was a true criminal?
He nodded.
You are right. Very sharp, Miss Wesker. Yes, this person has committed no crime.
Gray sat at the helm and engaged the drive.
Mr. Mason, take the engineering station and begin configuring the drive to the specifications on the console. Mr. Wilde, I want you to memorize the lines here.
He tossed him a pad. Zack read it.
What? But we clearly aren't a human vessel.
Memorize the lines and each possible outcome, please. As for you, observant one, I read you are an excellent shot with that pistol of yours. We'll need that.
Red? Red where?
Gray chuckled.
Your resume.
He stood up and walked to the door.
I will be in my cabin. Alert me when we arrive.
He left. Lef followed him, and surprisingly no one stopped him. They just watched his back as he walked down the corridor. Lef was surprised at the speed at which Gray moved. He was already inside one of the cabins when Lef stepped out of the cockpit. After reaching the crew quarters, he checked his room, the largest. No one was there. Puzzled, he crossed the hall to Serlia's cabin, finding Gray standing there, reading a book.
You used to own this ship, right? Why didn't you take the largest room?
He read the book at the same time as he answered Lef.
2 of my crew members were married. They needed the bigger bed.
He turned the page. Lef caught a glimpse of the cover. It was Serlia's journal. As if somehow sensing Lef's realization of what Gray was reading, he chuckled.
It's funny. One can relieve so much stress just by putting down one's feelings and experiences. From what I read in this, it seems you had a very interesting crew here, Mr. Quill.
Lef snatched the journal and placed it in a drawer.
Why do you keep calling us by our last names? And how do you know who Feldo is?
He sat on a chair, his tail poking through the back. Sir Leah had always complained that the chair's tail opening wasn't big enough for her more bushy tail, but it fit Gray perfectly.
We aren't friends yet. Why should I call you by your first name? And as for Mr. Mason, I had a lovely chat with his mother and father-in-law. No, don't worry, I didn't hurt them.
Leff raised an eyebrow in puzzlement.
Wait, Feldo's married?
Not anymore.
Gray put his feet up on the table, and Leff eyed him suspiciously.
Don't get too comfy. I'll be wanting my ship back by the end of this thing.
Yes, of course. I won't be needing it anyway. Besides,
He gestured around the room.
it seems you've gotten awful comfortable.
Leff didn't really know what to think of this guy. He was casual, friendly even. Though he was clearly very dangerous and wouldn't hesitate to shoot any one of them, it was as though he regretted having to coerce them. Leff didn't know what he would have said had Gray come to him in peace and proposed the idea of this jailbreak. He probably would have said no, though Leff didn't have all the details. He sat down on another chair Sir Leah had in her room. Leff decided to be bold.
Why do you need us?
Gray looked up, his blind eye showing little features, simply appearing to be a milky orb.
What?
I mean, us specifically. You need the ship for the access codes, but you could have left us behind.
Gray took his feet off the table and turned to face Leff.
When I discovered who had my ship, I was intrigued. You and your crew have quite the track record. Exposing a cult and a major drug dealer, both of which led to many arrests of many guilty people. Quite frankly, you're perfect for the job.
Then you should have asked us.
Gray smiled.
You would have said no.
Leff frowned. Gray seemed to have plenty of information about him and his crewmates.
How do you know so much about us anyway? Did you read all our resumes?
Actually, I did very little research. You're all quite easy to read. For instance, it would take a blind man to not notice how your chief engineer is jealous of Mr. Mason. Or you and that young pilot. Are you married or just mates?
Leff kept his expression as neutral as he could.
We're married.
Gray wagged a claw at him.
Now, what did your mother tell you about lying?
Just testing you. Impressive, by the way. So, who are we getting out of jail?
An innocent individual.
Gray watched Leff's face and his reaction.
Come on, you have us here against our will, helping you with a dangerous mission. You could at least tell us who it is.
I will tell you one thing. They're an Atrian prisoner of war.
Leff was surprised. He was expecting something more sinister. Atrian POWs weren't supposed to exist, though there had to be a reason that this person was still in prison.
All right, I'll let everyone know.
He stood and went to the door, stopping and turning around to speak, but Gray answered before he even spoke.
No, I won't go through any more of Miss Wesker's belongings, don't worry.
The next day, Grace kept her eyes open for any trouble. The last time she received a note from somebody, it had not gone unnoticed. This seemed to be the case now, as a group of women approached her, and they did not look friendly. She recognized the leader, Cheryl, notorious for getting what she wanted through violence and cunning in equal measure.
Hey, pussycat. I heard you got something from the outside.
Grace pushed past her.
Get your ears checked.
Cheryl grabbed Grace's tail as she passed, yanking it back savagely. Grace yelped in pain and shot around, her paws outstretched as though she still had claws. Cheryl and her entourage laughed and encircled Grace.
Now, pussycat. They took your claws away, remember? Give it to me.
Grace growled. Cheryl had expected her to hiss because of her uncanny similar appearance to an Earth organism. However, all Atrians shared a very similar set of internal organs, with a few exceptions, and only growled to show aggression.
I threw it away.
Lynn, one of Cheryl's underlings, stepped up from behind and stepped on Grace's tail. She was about to laugh about it when she received a swift blow to the sternum, knocking her over. Cheryl cracked her knuckles and stepped forward.
You're lying. I bet it was something good. Give it to me.
Hey, break it up, ladies.
A guard walked up, brandishing her nightstick. Cheryl turned around with a look of defiance on her face, but she smiled at the guard.
Grace was just showing us a furry sport. Ain't that right?
Grace knew better than to start something.
Yeah.
The guard eyed them suspiciously.
Get back to your cells.
The group dispersed, mumbling and grumbling, shooting dirty glances at Grace. The guard stopped her before she could return to her cell.
You better have been telling the truth.
Grace recognized the guard as one who was more sympathetic.
I was. There's nothing to stab me over.
The guard tapped her on the shoulder.
Good. Don't want that to happen on my shift. Too much paperwork. Back to your cell.
Gray stepped onto the cockpit, floated across the room, and sat in the pilot's seat.
We're here.
Feldo looked up from his work.
What? But we haven't dropped out of...
The ship dropped out of hyperspace, having reached its destination, a point far away from the prison planet, just on the outskirts of the system it was in. Feldo coughed.
Creepy.
Gray set the computer to hold their position, ensuring there was no celestial bodies nearby.
Their sensor net begins a few hundred miles from here, Mr. Mason. Have you completed the modifications?
He leaned on the console and sighed.
Yes.
Good. Not a moment to lose, then. Mr. Wilde, take the captain's seat. Mr. Mason, you will find magnesium flares in our shuttle. Please load them into the particle cannons and program the automatic attack pattern Delta 8. It's in the main computer. Mr. Quill, Miss Wesker, you will be coming with me on one of the fighters when the time is right. I explained the plan earlier. Do you all know your roles?
They all nodded. Gray swept to the engineering station and flipped a switch. There was a loud grinding sound and a hiss from deep within the ship.
There. Now we're disguised.
He swept back to the pilot seat and set a course directly to the prison planet. Gray muttered something under his breath, which only he could hear.
I'm coming, Grace.
Cutter-class vessels were by every means formidable warships. The ship was small in stature, long and tapering to a point, resembling a giant needle. From the rear, where the energy was stored, to the tip, where the energy, having gone through many amplification coils, was discharged with devastating effect. Once fired, these ships took 20 minutes to recharge, but nothing was suspected to survive one blast. Cutter-class ships were in danger of going obsolete, being completely useless against prototype plasma shields, much to the inventor's anguish, as it didn't serve in any wars and was already becoming useless for ship-to-ship operations. However, 2 of these ships were more than enough to guard an already heavily armed prison planet. The bridge of the command cutter, the Maggot, was very small and only had room for 3 crew. The commander, in charge of operations, both shipboard and stellar traffic duties, hated her job. It was boring. Nobody tried to escape, and the tedium of looking at cargo manifests and security codes over and over got on her nerves somewhat. She never got to fire the cutter, not even for target practice. She was sitting, reading an old book called To Kill a Mockingbird, when the sensor operator perked up.
Commander Paula, unscheduled cargo ship incoming.
A slight smile played across her lips. Perhaps her day was about to become interesting.
Hail them!
The ceiling of the bridge lit up, and a nervous-looking human appeared on it.
Hi, I'm Captain Halen of the cargo ship Leap of Faith. I know this might be unexpected, but the warden ordered an express shipment of hot sauce, and he's waiting.
The man looked vaguely like someone she had seen in a movie once.
Well, Captain Halen, you are not on the arrivals list, so you're going to have to turn around and leave.
Captain Halen shifted uncomfortably.
Check the whitelist. You'll see us on there.
The commander muted the line and turned to the operations officer to her right.
Check it.
After a moment, he turned around and nodded.
Yep, they're whitelisted.
She reopened the channel.
Well then, transmit your security code and we'll let you through.
Halen nodded to someone off screen, and the code was entered directly into the cutter's computer system. The ops officer watched his screen, then turned around.
It's an older code, sir, but it checks out.
Commander Paula smiled to the captain, but internally fumed. Turned out it was just the warden's strange hot sauce addiction getting her hopes up.
All right, dock with Cargo Station 2. They will handle everything.
Halen looked relieved, and he nodded, then cut the line. The commander was still skeptical, however.
Keep an eye on that ship, and scan it thoroughly.
Aye.
5 minutes later, the sensor analysis was complete, and the cargo ship was halfway through the system, still at a visual range.
There's something strange about this power signature. It looks like a regular Solar Federation standard issue cargo ship, but it's got much more mass than it should.
The commander stood up and studied the readout.
What do you mean?
It's twice as heavy than the power signature would have us believe, see?
It was true. Although the ship appeared, to the sensors, to be a Solar Federation cargo ship, it was moving much slower and was much larger and heavier.
Where are they now?
They're passing the sensor station, sir.
She sat down and folded her hands.
Set a course, maximum sublight speed. Contact the Finch, order them to follow.
The two cutters flew swiftly towards the sensor station, which the Leap of Faith was lumbering past. As soon as the maggot was within visual range, Commander Paula ordered the forward cameras on.
Let's see them with our own eyes.
The ship on screen was definitely not a Solar Federation vessel.
What the hell is that? General quarters! Check the ship registry. Get me a match on that model.
The operation officer's hands flew over his console, activating combat alert and running a search on the ship.
Sir, it's an Atrian cargo vessel, decommissioned 10 years ago. H model. I ran the numbers. It's the Frontier, not the Leap of Faith.
Hail them.
Halen appeared on the screen again, sweat pouring down his face.
Hi.
We saw through your little disguise. Now, deactivate your engines and state your purpose here.
Halen looked up and to the left, searching his brain.
Well, we didn't want to start anything, so we pretended to be a human ship. I don't know what you might do if we found out we were in a furry vessel.
Paula narrowed her eyes at him.
Is that so? Then you wouldn't say no to a search.
Oh my god. Commander, get your ship!
The line fizzled, then died. Nobody had time to react before the Atrian ship exploded in a bright flash. The entire ship was engulfed in light, almost blinding the bridge crew.
What the hell? Someone report!
The ship was rocked as white-hot bits of metal hit the hull.
Sir, the sensors are going crazy. That blast is too much for them.
The light eventually died down after a few minutes, and the camera showed the Frontier, totally intact.
Okay. Someone tell me what's going on.
I don't understand. Wait, sir. There's about 300 inert magnesium flares floating around the area. Sir, they're hailing us.
On screen.
Halen looked distraught, and the commander could see what she assumed to be the crew members running around in the background.
I'm sorry, Commander. We've just had a very serious weapons malfunction. The computers just fired off all our flares and shut down our weapons. Are you damaged?
She was taken aback.
No we aren't. You and I are going to have a little chat. Prepare to be boarded.
I'm sorry, we can't. The computer also locked the ship down. All of the bulkheads are stuck closed.
The commander turned to her ops officer.
Verify it.
The officer initiated a wireless uplink to the Frontier's computer, and after a minute, he shrugged.
Verified. Their computer has control of most systems. Looks like it's corrupt.
Paula looked back up at the nervous captain.
How long until you get computer control back?
Halen looked to his left, and someone told him something Paula couldn't make out.
Another hour or two. Depends on how bad this is. We'll stay here for now. Tell the warden his hot sauce will have to wait.
The commander nodded, then cut the line. She turned to Ops.
I'm not convinced there isn't something going on here. Study the sensor logs from when they fired the flares, and check with the warden about the shipment. Also, contact the Intergovernmental Info Exchange Office and ask them for all files on the Frontier.
Aye.
Lef, Gray, and Celia were all crammed into one of the fighters, already entering the atmosphere of the planet.
See? They didn't see us. The sensor station and both cutters were the only detection equipment in orbit, and they were disabled by our flares.
Yeah, alright, it worked, but as soon as we approach the prison, we'll be seen.
Gray took them close to the ground.
We aren't going to approach it from an expected angle. See that gorge over there?
Celia craned her neck out the window and saw a narrow scar in the earth running into the horizon.
Right now, we're too far away to be detected, but anything in the air or on the ground would be at a range of about 1 kilometer. There is one weakness, however.
He pointed to the gorge.
We won't be detected if we fly directly to the prison through that.
If Lef, at that moment, had been drinking milk, it would have come out his nose.
What? I couldn't even fly through that without obliterating us all against the wall!
Gray chuckled and dipped the craft into the gorge, which for now was relatively straight.
I have seen your skill, and your young pilot's skill. Not to brag, but I have been flying since before you were born, and have skills that far surpass both of you combined.
A giant stack of rocks rose from nowhere, and Gray expertly maneuvered around it, tipping the fighter 90 degrees while he did. Lef and Sirlia clung to each other as he continued to defy death, swerving through tight rock formations and scraping the canyon floor to avoid natural bridges.
Sirlia, if we survive this, I'll never say anything to annoy you again.
And I'll never go through your browser history again.
Wait, what?
Nothing! Look out!
A huge boulder was blocking their path through a particularly tight space. Gray just coolly activated the plasma cannons and blasted it to bits, showering the fighter with debris.
You'll get us all killed!
Gray chuckled as he avoided a wall protrusion.
We're almost there. Hang on.
They turned the next corner and were faced with the end of the canyon, the prison not far away. Gray set them down gently, but Lef and Sirlia didn't let go of each other.
Are we safe?
Yes, now. There isn't a moment to lose.
He opened the door and pushed them through. The planet was hot, dusty, and dry, and as Lef looked around, he found it eerily still and quiet. Gray was already walking towards the cliff face, pointing to an old, frayed rope.
Well, it looks like I didn't waste my money after all. Looks like the rope's here.
He didn't climb it, however, instead crouching down. Lef and Sirlia walked over to see what he was doing, and found him fiddling with a small device. Lef peered at it.
What's that?
He pressed a button on the side of the device and stood.
It will cause all the security cameras to display a 10-second loop. Now we can get inside with a little sneaking.
He grabbed the rope.
And a little climbing.